the whole claim here is that we enumerate different rights in this Constitution, but we can't enumerate everything because we don't have enough ink or paper in which to do it. So we enumerate certain things in the Constitution. Everything else is not meant to deny or disparage things. It's retained by the people. And by the same token, we have the 10th Amendment with regard to powers not delegated to the United States remain with the states.
Welcome to the Republic Podcast, where history meets scrutiny and facts matter. Join Rob and Lou as they dive deep into the foundations of American democracy, dissect the laws that shape our lives, and challenge the narratives behind today's headlines. From forgotten chapters in the U.S. history to the legal truths they didn't teach you in school. This is your front row seat to get informed, unapologetic conversation. We have an American republic, if we can keep it. Now, let's get started. All right. And it's another episode here.
This is the Republic, if you can keep it podcast.
Exactly. I'm Lou.
And I am Rob. Lou, here's to you.
Rob, here's to you. And here's everyone out there. Thank you for sticking with us. We have now been on and running for over 3 months now, providing normal information to people. Legal information in a very casual and normal way.
It's legal information about the country that we love, that we want to impart to everyone. So, because no one seems to, I shouldn't say no one, many people either have forgotten or were never taught.
And so we're here to help enlighten you. So where are we now? So we've covered at this last episode, we've covered all the way up to the final part of the Bill of Rights. We've gone through all the way up to the 8th Amendment. And this episode, we're going to cover the last two, the 9th and 10th.
Now, for everyone out there who's just getting your jive on with the podcast, we've done the Declaration of Independence. We've talked about the founding of it. We've talked about the founding of the Constitution. We've gone through the Constitution itself, preamble, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3. And we've talked about the balance of it as well. And then we've done the last several outside of our special editions, which you really should take a look at, about things that have come up implicating these topics, the constitutionality of things, the Declaration of Independence in modern events. But we've gone through the Bill of Rights up and through the 8th Amendment. Now, there are 10 amendments to wrap up the Bill of Rights. And just so everyone remembers, Constitutional Convention started in 1787. And the framers of the Constitution met in Philadelphia for months, hammered out through compromise, and it did not have the Bill of Rights.
Right.
The Constitutional Convention was 1787. The Constitution was actually only ratified. It took the colonies to ratify it 3 years later, 1790. But there was such a clamor for, we need additional amendments to this, we need a Bill of Rights, that the framers went back and promised, yep, we'll put one together, we'll do that. And they did.
Right. And the whole reason behind that is because they wanted to make sure that these rights that were not specifically enumerated were enumerated. Because, again, the Constitution is not there to grant rights to the people, but to restrict what the government can do to the people.
Nice shirt, by the way.
And by the way, if you're here joining us, what we're asking is, and if you're still joining us, if you're still here or you're new, like, share, and subscribe.
And
that'll
share.
keep us going. So it's, again, they wanted to make sure and make it clear. And people looking back is like, well, why do we need to make it clear? Why do we need to specifically enumerate these certain rights? And back then, maybe they really didn't think a lot about it. But thank God they did, because it's some of these rights that we've dealt with. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment, which make it clear as far as what the government cannot do, because these are the rights of the people. And so now we're going to cover the last two, which, although people take for granted, it's not really something that you really hear a lot about. That these last two amendments, the Ninth and 10th Amendment, are still vitally important. So
The Constitution, as it is an amazing document, but the Bill of Rights really solidifies it as the document for the globe that everyone looks back to the United States in jealousy about, quite frankly. And I don't say that blithely. People, when we have traveled, whether it's to the UK, whether it's to places elsewhere, Caribbean, we've been to Mexico, other stuff, and we've been blessed to be able to do that. You talk to locals, and somehow, some way, it always seems to come up. Oh, well, we wish, we had the same freedom of expression without worrying that the government's going to come and put us in jail or censor us or take our money or do whatever. Big reminder to everyone that the Constitution was a compromise. There were the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, meaning there were some people who wanted a strong centralized government, and then there were a lot of the founding fathers who said, we just fought a revolution trying to get rid of a king because we didn't want that kind of heavy-handed centralized government, or at least a government that was so heavy-handed happened to be centralized, but just a heavy-handed government. And so now we have the Ninth Amendment, and it sounds very simple. And it is.
it is. It
The
is.
enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Famously, to the extent that you can be famous about the Ninth Amendment, because there hasn't been a lot of case law about it.
Right.
During his would have been Supreme Court judicial hearings, then Judge Bork, when asked about the Ninth Amendment, called it an ink blot because he said there was probably something more interesting underneath it. But everyone skips over the Ninth, and it really ought not be. The whole claim here is that we enumerate different rights in this Constitution, but we can't enumerate everything because we don't have enough ink or paper in which to do it. So we enumerate certain things in the Constitution. Everything else is not meant to deny or disparage things. It's retained by the people.
Right.
And by the same token, we have the 10th Amendment with regard to powers not delegated to the United States remain with the states.
Yeah. And so exactly. So they're basically part and parcel to one another. Just one is, resolved person, and the other one is the state. The main thing about the Ninth Amendment is that when discussing it was Justice Scalia was discussing the Ninth Amendment, it's like that it's more of a constructual and like basically allowing people to see things that are imbued in other amendments, like the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment, or the First and Second Amendment.
Right.
It's not really in his reading of it, it didn't create a substantive right in and of itself. Then you have the more progressive movement on that, where that again, Scalia being a very strict constitutional, interpretive, he stuck very close to what the Constitution says. If it didn't say it specifically, then it didn't apply. Then you have some of the more progressive movements, and what the court really, the last time there was really ever used or discussed was during Roe versus Wade, when the Supreme Court discussed the issue of the right to an abortion, the right to life, the right, and what it was created is the right to privacy, where they said that there's no specific enumerated right to privacy in the Constitution, but essentially tied it, saying since it's not something that was specifically reserved to the government, we're going to create this right to privacy. Right. Now, when it was overturned, that's where they said, well, yeah, look, that basically this right to privacy was created at whole cloth, where there's no discussion of right to privacy enumerated in the Bill of Rights or in any of the other amendments. So really, there's no such thing as a right to privacy. So that's where really the dichotomy of the Ninth Amendment comes into play.
Right. The Ninth Amendment, we're trying to be as clear as we can about it because there is such there's actually, even though there's not a lot of case law about it, there's been a lot of scholarly debate in law review articles and different things of the sort. When you really distill it, the Ninth Amendment, and I wrote this down during my research just to refresh my memory about it, and this was the easiest way to remember. The rights not specifically enumerated are still protected, period.
Right.
So whether you want to be expansive about rights or not, but just because it's not specifically stated in the Constitution, if there is a legitimate right, it's still protected.
Right. Right. And so, I mean, and that was the founders for sort of catch-all. Like,
Right.
we didn't think of it here. We're throwing this, phone a friend out there. We're going to toss this out there just to cover it. So in case this comes up at some time in the future, that it'll be out there. And it makes it clear. This is not an exhaustive Bill of Rights, because if we made it exhaustive, it could be, like some of the legislation that we see here. You got to pass it before you can know what's in it, type of stuff. Yeah, I know. I threw that in there. Like 1,000 pages of legal jargon, which says nothing. So they wanted to say, look, these are the ones we feel that are most important, but unless it's something that we specifically say you don't have, then you have that right.
Right. So another example of how these founding fathers of ours were forward thinking and wanted to create a document that wasn't simply something that was carved in stone and that's it. It can be breathed life into based upon different changes of time. It could be amended. Of course, it's a very strict way of having to make it amended. It's not just so easy to do, but it could be. And now we move on to the 10th. The 10th is real simple again. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states or to the people. Now remember, as Lou said at the beginning, and as we've talked about with the whole Constitution, the Constitution's whole purpose was to limit the power of the government. So if the power wasn't delegated specifically to the United States federal government, by default, unless it was prohibited otherwise, it remains with the states. And remember, back in the 1790s, 1780s, 1790s, the Federalists, Anti-Federalists was a very, very big debate. And the states, the colonies at the time, to be states, were very, very particular about making sure that their particular dominions, Connecticut, Virginia, Georgia, their states actually meant something. They didn't want it just to dissolve into the bigger United States. The states actually mean something. And the 10th Amendment is there as a testament to that.
Right. And to put it in perspective, at the time that the 10th Amendment came up and it was ratified, the only rights the only rights specifically reserved to the federal government were essentially coining currency and declaring war. That was it. That it was pretty much wide open for the states. And that was by design, because again, as Rob said, and as the whole Federalists, Anti-Federalists, all the discussions that go on about that, they wanted to keep it decentralized, where the federal government should be in charge of the most important things, the things that really we want may have uniform, but that we want the government to be responsive enough where the people for each different state can shape what their state looks like. And that's where you hear a lot of the different issues that come up now, is when you have, again, going back to, and that, when I was discussing, it's never meant to be something, discussing the issue of abortion or rights to privacy, but this is where it's coming up again, is where people are saying one of the concerns that people have is that, look, that this whole issue regarding the freedom of abortion, freedom of rights, stuff like that, right to privacy, they're concerned that there's going to be a federalized movement against that, and that they're going to make it a federal statute or federal, that we're going to create a federal law saying that you can or cannot, or however, whatever you prefer is. The 10th Amendment is pretty much preventing that from happening. That's saying that that's not something specifically preserved in the Constitution. as a right of the federal government. So as such, that will, essentially that will never happen.
Right.
So,
And remember, the absolute, the baseline and the underlying definition of this country and the character of this government, the federal government, really comes down to this. And the 10th Amendment kind of encapsulates it. Our government is one of limited and enumerated powers. So whenever an issue comes up, you got to ask yourself first, not whether it violates someone's rights. Okay. But whether it exceeds the national government's powers to do so.
right.
Does the
Exactly.
government have the power? Because only certain enumerated powers were given to the government. And if it wasn't given to the federal government, if it wasn't given to the federal government, stays with the states.
Right. I mean, if there's one thing that you take out of any of this, that's a key phrase.
Right.
If it's not in there, then the federal government has no authority.
So now you can see, even all these years later, the balance and the compromise between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. This is basically saying to those people who were the Anti-Federalists, hold on, don't be scared, because whatever we're not giving to the federal government, and it's going to be limited, you guys still have, which helped enable the passage of the Bill of Rights, which helped buttress the Constitution. And as my daughter would say, chef's kiss, done.
Yeah. And that's where you've seen a lot of different challenges on different issues, and that at least the theoretical debates, because the 9th and 10th Amendment really are mainly theoretical and legal debates. It's not something that you see in action. The last time that you saw the 10th Amendment really in action is challenges to the Affordable Care Act, and where people were saying that, look, you don't have a right to force people to have to take, to get health insurance.
Right.
Yes. Is that a privilege that they have? Yes. Is that something they can do if they want? But there's nothing in there's nowhere in anywhere that says that the federal government has this authority. And that the challenge was to the Affordable Care Act, since the federal government doesn't have it, it's up to the states, and let the states decide how they want to do it. The challenge on that, and there's still debates about that, and there's still challenges. And I'm sure if there's any changes that come up to the Affordable Care Act coming up in the next legislation or the next session of Congress, then I'm sure that's going to be challenged again as well.
So now that we've gone through the Bill of Rights and we have this, now there are an additional 17 more amendments over time which have been made. I think it's 17 more off the top of my head.
Right.
But this was the framing of the country. And Lou and I we're going to go into during our next episode, because I'm like back and forth. I apologize.
No.
Thank you, everyone out there who's been making comments.
Right.
And been giving us direction and saying, hey, can you talk about this? And one of the things that has been
you've been listening to us about like, share, and subscribe.
And one of the things that has been directed to us, we've had a lot of people ask us to go into more depth with the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments.
Right.
Because those are the ones that are most personal to people, because those are the ones when you really are feeling the brunt or the weight of the government trying to, put you in handcuffs, take your life, liberty. 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments are the key. So we've had a lot of those. So we're going to, in our next episode, focus and really get more into the weeds about the 4th, 5th, and 6th. But for the balance of this particular episode of our podcast, we wanted to wrap up the whole part of the Constitution with the Bill of Rights. And why is this important?
Right.
Because we could talk about it, and that's great. And like, okay, blah, 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 10th Amendment, states' rights. So what? Why do we care? Why is this important? You guys talk about, you started this podcast because you wanted to reinstill some pride in our country, which people have lost, whether through watching too much TikTok, whether it's not being educated to begin with, whatever the reason, we are here for that. And this, before we get into a whole bunch of other things, is so vitally important.
Right.
The law of the land stems from the Constitution of the United States. Period. Stop. End of story. What we have forgotten and what we have been very too lax about is the appreciation for what we have, and that this is the law of the land. This particular law of the land came about at a time when nothing like this had been seen. And people in the 21st century, well, I don't understand why these crazy, these white men are privileged and they just didn't understand how could. Well, if you're going to hold everyone to that standard from 1790, why don't you criticize people in the United Kingdom, in France, in Spain? Where were those rights in the Middle Eastern countries? Where were those rights in the South American countries? Where were those rights anywhere? There weren't. You can't impose the lens from a 21st century on that. But the beauty of what we have here in the Constitution is that it allows interpretation. It allows let's talk about this. Let's go into this. Let's evolve with these things to the extent that it is still comports with the Constitution.
Right. And the Supreme Court, many of the justices have said, and legal scholars have said, beyond us two, no, that the Constitution is a living document, and it really is.
Right.
It's a living document, but the arguments I've had with people are that simply because it's a living document doesn't mean that each time you see it that it's read fresh. That
Right.
oh my gosh, that you have to look at what the foundation is and what the words actually say, not necessarily in contemporary language, but what it meant back then, and how although it has evolved over the period of time, that there's certain inalienable rights that were imbued upon us and that were basically put down into writing in the Constitution and in the Declaration of Independence and in the Bill of Rights, but that you can't invent it and sway it how you want it to read for you specifically at that time to benefit you. You have to have a solid set writing. And that's where, as we've talked about with in Article 3 with the judiciary case precedent, and how really everything is built upon case law and how the courts have ruled and how we built upon those rules on interpretations. And that's also why, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Lou hit it right on the head. You need to have, it's a living document, yes, but it's grounded and it starts with the understanding of the intent of the drafters. The framers put these words into place because of certain events, of certain beliefs, certain systems. And oh, by the way, go read the Federalist Papers, because those are the arguments for the Bill of Rights. But
yeah, I'll include those in the
Constitution,
links.
With regard to the Constitution, you have Article 1. We talk about the Congress. We talk about, if you listen to C-SPAN for any bit of time, by the way, you're going to need to drink like we do. Oh, good Lord, those people. But you would think that everything in the world can be done and how it should be done, and we should just flippantly do this because we want to do this, and it's nice to feel good about things. It's nice to talk rosy and whatever, but at the end of the day, the Congress is of limited authority. It has limited things that it can do, and oftentimes, it needs to be reined in and reminded, no, you can't do this because Article 1 says this, this, and this. Same thing, Article 2. Right. We talk about the powers designated to the executive branch. And there are times with different administrations who think of their powers very differently from the other administrations. And this one is this. And we can do look at what you can do. It's restrained for a reason. We fought a revolution against King George III.
Document right here. It says
We fought a revolution against King George III because X, Y, and Z. And that frames the thought process of the framers who lived through that and did not want to see that repeat in this country.
Right.
For Article 1 powers, Article 2 powers, Article 3 powers. So yeah, it's a living document, but you have to understand where it came from, what it says, and then you can move on, which is part of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Right. And one of the other things is regarding the amendments, 27 amendments. And as we've discussed before, during the Article 1 and Article 2, the issue regarding amending the Constitution.
Right.
There's a reason why it is so difficult. There is a reason why when the founding fathers, when the framers of the Constitution took a look at the Constitution, they wanted to make it difficult for you to amend it, to change it, because that's how significant it is. That's how serious they were about this, and why you need it. It's got to be approved by the Congress, approved by the Senate. It's going to be 2/3 ratification of all the states. And again, there's only been 29 times that it's ever been brought up, or 28 times. One of them was repealed. So so they had to repeal an amendment with another amendment. So that's why I'm only saying 27, but really, that it's by design, because statutes can change. Statutes very often do change. They repeal them, they revise them, they update them, because that's what laws are meant to do, is to be responsive to the people. But the Constitution, you need a foundational bedrock upon which everything is based.
I was just going to say, the best way I've ever heard put that into a simile form, it's a house. You can build a house on a foundation and you can change its paint color. You can change the windows. You can change the room structure. You can change how many floors it has, put eaves on it, whatever. And you can change all that really simple. Those are laws. You can do that a lot more flexibly, but you need the foundation.
Right. Like with anything, without a solid foundation, nothing will stand.
And I will tell you that one of my favorite quotes about the Constitution came from the man, the OG, George Washington himself. And that quote says, "The Constitution is the guide which I will never, I mean, I think he said, which I never will abandon, because it was older time, but the Constitution is the guide which I never will abandon."
Right.
And he saw what had been going on in the French and Indian Wars. He had seen all of the concerns with regard to the overstep by King George III. He had seen the privations given to the Continental Army, all of the years of blood, sweat, and tears. He goes to the Continental Congress to give it some gravitas, like, we're going to draft the Constitution, damn it, and we're going to draft these Bills of Rights.
Right.
And he knew, he had the foresight to say, this is what's important. He recognized the importance of this whole thing, as he's not alone, but as being the founding father of our founding fathers. He really was the OG, and he said, I'm not going to abandon it. That's the foundation of this country. That's the legacy of our founding fathers.
Right. And as Rob and I discussed when we talked about the Declaration of Independence and the initial development of the Constitution, but not for him, it very easily could have gone a different way, and we would be a very different country today. So here's to George, the OG.
George, my man. So for everyone out there, and I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm going to beat the damn thing till it goes to the glue factory. This country and what we call the American experiment is so fundamentally special because it was something that had never been implemented before. It creaks and it moans and whatever, like any 250-year-old, 200-year-old structure of any kind, but it has withstood the test of time. There are people around the world who keep yearning to breathe free, to come here to live as Americans, because they recognize, as from where they were in the world, this place offers its citizens such an amazing array and bounty of privileges and rights. It, among them, stems primarily from, in my view, the Constitution restraining its own government.
Right.
And
Not
that
empowering.
is something that is not done around the world, and that is not said enough to recognize, for people to understand that is a premise of this country. Our own government, our founding fathers wanted to restrain its own government's rights and allow people the opportunity to be responsible for themselves, to have agency for themselves, and to create and actually be themselves, and not being under the foot of a governmental leader, being under, the oppression of whoever is at the top of the governmental heap that particular era. Now, there's been a lot of talk about rugged individualism lately over the past several years, and particularly now. If you
Really?
didn't have rugged individualism,
We wouldn't
this
have a
country
country.
wouldn't exist. And this country has been the most prosperous one that has been fortunate enough on the face of this earth. So it's got something going for it.
As I
And I'll
always
shut
say,
up there.
no, my favorite saying is the United States of America, often imitated, never duplicated. And that's what makes us the best.
In the links, we're going to put the 9th and 10th Amendments in there for you to see, but we'll also put the entire
Links to the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalists, and the entire Constitution and Declaration of Independence and Bill of Rights.
But he said,
What else?
no,
Huh?
that's it. It's really imperative. You can listen to two attorneys who get together and chat. And that's great. And we love that you're here, but we also want you to be educated. Don't take our word for it just because we said so, although you really ought to. No, I'm kidding. But we give the backup documentation as much as we can, because we want people to read. And if you have any questions and you say, well, I read this about how does this interplay with this? In the comments, ask.
Right.
We read them. We want to be able to respond to you.
Right. I mean, exactly.
So
I think that was good. I mean, I'm not gonna. I was gonna go on more, but I think that's a good finishing point right there.
And we're there.
We're done. So once again, thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. We really enjoy having you here with us, and we love the comments. We love the interaction, and please again, like, share, subscribe. That's what keeps us going. Push that algorithm. Make those numbers. The numbers are going up every day. We want to see them keep going. And with that, Rob?
And appreciate the government. No.
Right.
That's terrible. I'm sorry. Appreciate the country that you have.
Yes. Not the government.
Keep the government on its toes to make sure it's mindful of its founding documents. And here's a toast to those founding documents and those founding fathers who had balls of granite.
Balls of granite. Here you go.
There you go.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next episode.
You got it.
Later, brother.
Shut up and sit down.
Thanks for listening to The Republic, If You Can Keep It podcast. Join Rob and Lou in our next episode as we continue our riveting discussions on the most important topics affecting our great republic. Drop a line for topics you want to discuss, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time.